Taking Back Sunday was formed in 1999 by Antonio Longo, John Nolan, Eddie Reyes, Jesse Lacey, and Stephen DeJoseph in Long Island, New York. This lineup was changed midway through their first EP, with Jesse Lacey and Stephen DeJoseph leaving and Adam Lazar taking the bass and Mark O'Connell taking the drums. Taking Back Sunday has changed their style through the years, and for a long time made post-hardcore music until more recently with their influence leaning more towards alternative rock and pop rock. Taking Back Sunday has released 8 albums, 2 EPs, and some singles to add onto their discography. Taking Back Sunday has found success with their songs on the radio and contributing their songs for the Fantastic Four video game soundtrack, the Spider-Man 2 soundtrack, and Tony Hawk American Wasteland soundtrack as well. Taking Back Sunday was also featured on an episode of Degrassi, The Next Generation, which was named What's It Feel Like to Be a Ghost, which was named after the opening track for Louder Now. Enough of the general information, let's move on to the styles the band has experimented with and how they've made their style unique. As mentioned before, Taking Back Sunday's older work is more post-hardcore and emo, while more recent work is more pop rock and alternative rock. More specifically, their first album, Tell All Your Friends, to their self-titled album are mostly post-hardcore, with some other rock genres thrown in as well. Their last 2 albums, Happiness Is and Tidal Wave, are lighter than their previous works. Anyways, Taking Back Sunday's post-hardcore music utilizes heavy distorted guitars, emotional lyrics, that early and mid-2000s angst, and the occasional scream, while their newer stuff incorporates lighter tones and smoother on the ears vocals. Taking Back Sunday's lineup hasn't been consistent throughout the years, so listeners will hear different vocalists throughout some of the albums, and that could explain why Taking Back Sunday has a unique sound for each album. The only member that would stay with the band throughout its entire existence would be Adam Lazzara, the main vocalist and bassist. Released on March 26, 2002, Tell All Your Friends was Taking Back Sunday's first major release and put them on the map. Tell All Your Friends plays with its emo punk and post-hardcore style, with some songs being fast-paced to give energy and a sense of anger, while some songs take it slower and they give more of a melancholic feel. While the instruments stand on their own in each of these songs, the lyrics and singing really uplift this album. Lazzara and Nolan sing about their many personal experiences in a variety of ways, and some of their verses can really hit the listener in the heart. Nolan's sister Michelle also contributed lyrics in Bike Scene and Ghost Man on Third, and she adds a soothing coo to the verses of these songs. My only problem with this album is Bike Scene's interlude. While the ending to Bike Scene is fine, I believe it could have been better if the song ended with the opening riff played again with the last chord being left to ring until it became silent. Other than that, every song is put together very nicely, and the instruments and vocals come together to convey energy and emotion. My favorite songs were You Know How I Do, Cute Without the E, Bike Scene, and Great Romances of the 20th Century. Released on July 27, 2004, Where You Want to Be feels similar to Tell All of Your Friends, but still has its unique elements to separate it from its predecessor. Where You Want to Be keeps all the personal lyrics, amazing vocals, and amps up the power and distortion in the instruments. This album has more variety in its sound, and while it still has the fast and slow songs, Where You Want to Be plays more with its style. There's really only one song that is slow the whole way through. Everything else is either fast or has slow parts for its verses, riffs, and choruses. This album will definitely hit the listeners in the heart just as hard or even harder than Tell All Your Friends, as the instruments give off more emotion in this album. The only song I don't really care for is New American Classic, only because it doesn't have the post-hardcore or pop emo feel the other songs on this album have. These songs are allowed to be slow and more steady in order to create a certain feel, but when all the other songs contradict this one song's style, it tends to feel out of place. Even Slow Dance on the Inside has a nice heavy section in its chorus to make sure it's in pace with the rest of the album. Other than that, these songs are pretty damn good. My favorite songs were Bonus Mosh Pit 2, A Decade Under the Influence, This Photograph is Proof, and Number 5 with a Bullet. Released on April 25th, 2006, Louder Now significantly changed the style of music for Taking Back Sunday. First of all, Louder Now sways towards more of an alternative rock sound, while still having its post-hardcore and emo pop elements as well. Really, the instruments make the new sound what it is. The vocals are also changed, but in terms of what separates this album from their other albums, the instruments are the biggest contributor. That, and the new producer Eric Valentine. He's pretty good at what he does. Secondly, this album is more focused on other personal matters, rather than just relationships that didn't work out and personal rivalries. Lazar has stated Take It Back Sunday was starting to grow up. It wasn't just about being in high school, they realized they should be more adult about things. Lazar commented a lot about the songs on this album, and provides some good insight to what they were thinking when they made this album, and adds another perspective on their music. I think this album cuts the edginess of Where You Want to Be and Tell All Your Friends, and that seems to alternate the sound enough for this to feel like a new and different album. Anyways, my favorite songs were What's It Feel Like to Be a Ghost, Miami, "2020 Surgery," and Liar. Released on July 2nd, 2009, New Again is really innovating in that it creates a whole new sound for Take It Back Sunday, but still keeps enough of its style from previous albums to ensure it isn't far off from what made Take It Back Sunday the band they were. The title for this album is really fitting. It's kinda hard to describe exactly what makes New Again different from their other works. The instruments and vocals sound closest to Louder Now, but it still remains very unique in every song it has. I think it's the way this album paces itself, and how much clearer and smoother this album is compared to its predecessors. This is really the turning point for Take It Back Sunday, when they left their emo and post-hardcore influence for a more pop-punk and alternative rock sound. For clarification, the post-hardcore influence isn't completely left out of this album, and their newer albums, but it's definitely toned down, especially compared to their first two albums. Anyways, This album is put together very well. Those emotional vocals feel amazing in this album, and the instruments, while toned down, still pull their own weight, and both come together to take It Back Sunday sound from their previous albums and process it to pop punk and a new style that would carry on to their other albums. My favorite songs were New Again, Swing, Carpathia, and Everything Must Go. On June 28, 2011, Take It Back Sunday released their fifth album, which is just self-titled. This album it's alright. It starts off strong with its first two opening songs, but it falls in quality afterwards. It does eventually pick itself up again with This Is All Now, but even then, I don't really think there's any songs on here that made me go, this is definitely one of Take It Back Sunday's best tracks. It just doesn't have that same amount of energy or innovation past albums have. Anyways, let's talk about some of the good points. John Nolan returned for lead guitar and backup vocals ever since he departed after Tell All of Your Friends, and his vocals are pretty good. Most of the choruses in this album are actually decent. They're probably the best parts of most of these songs on this album. There's also another disc with the limited editions of this album. They're just demos, but they're alright. I think they're worth a listen if you thought this album was decent. It's hard to pick favorites for this album, but my favorite songs were Faith, This Is All Now, Sad Savior, and You Should Have Waited.
When you took that ring off, balled it in your fist, eyes like a smoking gun.
On March 18th, 2014, Happiness Is shifts Take It Back Sunday's post-hardcore and pop emo sound into the more pop rock and alternative rock sound it is today. This album is really filled with more lighter elements of rock and leaves out the heavier instruments and vocals from previous albums. Despite that, Happiness Is has a lot of energy in its songs and is actually a pretty decent album. It's consistent in terms of quality throughout each song. While this may be a totally different sound Take It Back Sunday has experimented with, it still feels like a Take It Back Sunday album, and it's not so leaning to pop rock and alternative rock that it completely loses Take It Back Sunday's overall style, but stays outside Take It Back Sunday's heavier sound in earlier albums. Happiness Is has an extended version known as Happiness Is, the complete recordings, containing 3 new songs and 3 acoustic covers of songs already on the album. It's no doubt better than their self-titled album. Anyways, my favorite songs were Flicker Fade, This Is Happening, Better Homes and Gardens, and We Were Younger Then. Released on September 16, 2016, Tidal Wave follows Taking Back Sunday's new pop rock sound and feels more, how do I say, floaty. I'm not exactly sure how to describe this album. I don't love it, but I don't hate it either. It's decent, it has its strong points, but it's not as good as previous albums. This album is light in terms of the style of rock, its instruments, and lyrics, departing from Taking Back Sunday's signature sound. Lazara is really the only one that sings in this album. There's not much backup vocals, and that's definitely one of this album's weak points. John Nolan and Fred Macherno's backup vocals were amazing and added to the emotion of the album and structure, which would both increase the quality of the music. For what it's worth though, I'd recommend Tidal Wave if you like newer Taking Back Sunday. That doesn't mean older Taking Back Sunday fans won't like this album or any of their newer stuff, it's just, this album is very derailed from their earlier albums, as I keep mentioning. Anyways, my favorite songs were Tidal Wave,
You can beg, you can plead, you can cry, you can pray, but nothing's gonna save you from the tidal wave. You can run, you can hide, you can leave, you can stay.
Call Come Running,
You can count on me. If you count on me, I'd come running.
I Felt It Too,
I felt sick to my stomach.
and Homecoming.
Gotta worry about me, baby. Now I got everything I need. There are many different kinds of pets we have as friends. Let's sing about them all and the things that make them special.
Apart from their studio albums, Take It Back Sunday has a handful of singles and an experimental EP. The Take It Back Sunday EP released somewhere in 2001 and doesn't feature the lineup of current Take It Back Sunday or even the lineup in Tell All Your Friends, which was released a year later. It doesn't have a consistent lineup. Jesse Lacey and Stephen Day Joseph were both on the tracks Go On and Summer Stars before departing Take It Back Sunday and being replaced by Adam Lazzara and Mark O'Connell. Anyways, the Take It Back Sunday EP is pretty different from anything they've released. The songs do sound like demos, but they're still decent in their own right. It's a lot more experimental than their older albums, letting sections play out and slowly pacing songs out. I would consider giving it a listen if you've already listened to a few albums by Take It Back Sunday and enjoyed them. I wouldn't normally bring up demos, but I will in this case. Take It Back Sunday has the Tell All Your Friends demos, Louder Now demos, and demos varying in terms of what album they appeared on. I would recommend listening to these demos if you're really into Take It Back Sunday or want to see how different songs were before they were professionally produced. The Louder Now demos are fairly different from the songs on the studio album. There's 2 takes of 2020 Surgery, and there's an unnamed song that never appeared on Louder Now or anything Take It Back Sunday has released for that matter.
She's the machine at the scene of the crime. I know my time is wasted.
Anyways, onto their singles. Take It Back Sunday doesn't have many singles, but the ones they do have are in line with their style, but differ in sound as they range from singles from Tell All Your Friends to current Take It Back Sunday. Personally, I would recommend Follow the Format, We All Love Our Pets, and She, which was originally performed by Green Day. Also, Take It Back Sunday has a bunch of interviews talking about their albums and provides some really good insight on their production and content. I would recommend these if you want to enrich your knowledge of Take It Back Sunday. In retrospect, Take It Back Sunday has varied in terms of their sound and quality, but their albums are, for the most part, well put together and worth the listen if you're into pop punk, post-hardcore, emo, or pop rock. They've played around with their style and have been successful in doing so, for the most part. Anyway, Here's a flowchart I put together so you can get more to Take It Back Sunday and see which albums are more for you. And until next time, tell all your friends.